everybody, and welcome back to Scrub League. We have so much stuff to talk about today. We are recording this episode just after BlizzCon wrapped, and there is HGC Finals to talk about. There's 2 new characters. There's a whole slew of changes coming to the game. I barely know where to begin.
Well, Kevin, let's start with the fact that your team pulled it out. MVP Black is the HGC champ.
It's only because he went with the coward's choice of a good team.
There are other good teams that you could have gone with, and there are other not laughable but still niche picks you could have gone with. But instead, you went with Roll20 and Tempo Storm. Which, you know what? I love me some Roll20. Tempo Storm, I don't know what that whole plan was.
Yeah, but I also have to give it to Fnatic here. They took the first game in the series because they took a huge risk and made a core push with their globals and ended up winning. And I think it was because MVP Black, as much as they are technically better, they were not prepared for that. And I think Fnatic is kind of known for pulling out those Hail Mary plays and kind of just confusing their opponent, and they did it really well for the first game, but I think MVP Black was just like, okay, now we know this is going to happen and we're going to adapt our play here, and they just pulled it out for the rest of the series.
Well, to be fair, in the final with MVP Black versus Fnatic, the first game, MVP Black did go kind of like an unorthodox team comp. They went triple warrior, so I think after they lost with that, they decided, okay, we'll just play standard and actually just roll our way to victory.
Turns out they can win when they play Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah, I found even when Fnatic was ahead on XP and levels, they just couldn't beat MVP with their team fighting. Their team fighting skills are just so incredibly on point. They just could not win a team fight most of the time against this team. They're just way too technically, like their synergy is just too good.
It's really good, and also again, we can't discount the drafting know-how that Noblesse brought to the four as their new coach, coming over from L5/Ballistics. MVP Black themselves really chalked up a lot of their success to Noblesse's coaching, and I think that was one of the many, many factors that pushed them over the edge. Because Fnatic, some would say, actually had better technical play throughout the majority of the tournament, but in the final, definitely MVP Black was rock solid, as expected.
Interesting side note, in all of the tournaments, teams from Korea won all of the events except for the World of Warcraft finals. And that went to the EU.
I mean, I'm not even surprised by that anymore. Korea's just constantly churning out really, really, really strong players and teams. That's NA is just kind of hoping to catch up to at some point.
It's like, I think Korea supports their players better, they foster their players better, and from a younger age. Now our post-secondary colleges and universities have esports teams. I mean, in Korea, they have their teams starting in high school. Like, I feel like the culture and kind of the fostering that goes on in Korea is just so on another level from, say, NA or even EU.
Yeah, I mean, that's just pretty much doubtless. Like, cultural changes, I think, pretty much make up everything, right? Now, Aden, do you want to tell us about how your team, Tempo Storm, did in their matchup against Fnatic in the semis?
Well, as we all know, they had that surprise victory in the first round, which I would say I took like a gentleman, and I handled it very well, and there was no gloating of any kind.
Subjective.
Sorry, that was my mistake. That was in the quarterfinals. So there was no gloating, but was there weeping later? Was there gnashing of teeth?
Well, I do remember coming back to suddenly see them getting their teeth kicked in. So yeah, it was a little bit of a shock to me.
Well, how do you think I feel? I'm freaking crying over here. Roll20, just.
Yeah, we need to talk about this game.
In that
This
final
is the
match,
game that we need to discuss.
They just, I was waiting for a nice, solid pick from them, and they go ahead and pick Vikings, and I'm just like, no, you guys ruined it for yourselves. What are you doing? That
All
other
right, let's.
team comp basically was built to counter Vikings, and I just cannot believe they threw it like that. I kind of see what they were thinking, and I kind of think this whole narrative of um, comfort picks kind of got to them, and they wanted to go for like a surprise change to try and throw people off, but it was a really bad time and really bad way to do it.
Yeah, that's what their tweets have been saying since the disaster happened, was that they had been doing this team comp and scrims, and it had been very successful for them. And they just were going in, and they didn't want to abandon it once it was clear that Ballistics was drafting the, like, unbeknownst to them, they were drafting the hard counter to what Roll20 was trying to do. But even that said, I still don't understand how the team comp was supposed to work. Like, I get that it was a secret strategy and that, you know, they got hard countered and didn't adapt and didn't change, and that was their mistake. But assuming that Ballistics didn't hard counter them, I'm not sure how the team comp was supposed to work.
Yeah, that was my issue with it as well. Like, aside from, I think there was even a little bit of play with the Lost Vikings that made me think maybe they needed more practice with this secret strategy. But even aside from that, normally with a weird pick like this, if I analyze it long enough, I can go, oh, there's the secret tech that I'm missing that these guys were clearly going for. But where was it? Where was it here?
I have no idea. So, I mean, typically the thing that you do when you play the Lost Vikings is you use them to soak all the lanes and be very, very safe. And then you roam around with like a 4-man gank team and gank all the lanes, or a 4-man sustain push team and you push in one lane really hard.
And yeah,
I
and they
don't.
didn't even draft the damage for that though. For that 4-man gank, they just didn't draft the damage for it.
It relied entirely on Tracer, but the problem with Tracer is she falls victim to someone like Greymane really easily. Because if she goes in and Greymane gets like one big swipe on her, she basically has to leave.
Yeah, so the team was Stitches, Tracer, Tassadar, the Lost Vikings, and Stukov, I believe. I think Stukov was supposed to be a counter to Varian because he can't protect himself when he's silenced.
He also comboed really well with Stitches. I'll give him that. That was a really cool thing to see, where they'll place the lurking arm where Stitches was going to spit someone out after consuming them.
Yeah, so that's a pretty, popular strat these days.
I mean, I think relying on Tracer for your soul damage is risky in any comp. But no, it was bad. And I felt for them because they're kind of in a weird position. Do they go with their comfort picks and kind of prove everyone right, but maybe do better? Or do they go against those comfort picks and pull an upset and do, great things? They took a risk. It failed. I think they'll come back next year, possibly with some different team members, and know to play it a little bit more safe with their drafts. And
But
not
it's
The thing
just
is, I
listen to
think
the
there's
chirping.
I think there's middle ground between those two possible scenarios where they take something that isn't a comfort pick but is also a smart pick, and that's just not something that we saw.
like, I'm sure Roll20, like, there's some logic that they could explain to us, but it's just okay. So are you doing like a Tracer task where you're diving their backline and protecting her, or are you doing like a Stitches where he's pulling them and then you're jumping on the guy who's pull? It just didn't line up.
I
Yeah,
don't
they
know.
had bits and pieces of several different strategies, and then they tried to Frankenstein it into one strategy that just didn't work.
All I know is I was yelling at the screen when I saw that last pick. Like, I was already kind of skeptical with their first 4 picks. And then I saw the last one, and I'm just like, oh no. And the casters, if you listen to the casters' reactions, I mean, you kind of knew it from there. They were kind of like, what the heck is going on? They just
Yeah.
picked the worst possible character.
After the fact, my man Grubby was saying that, like, if they had like a mental, they must have had like a mental breakdown essentially.
They are a pretty young, kind of inexperienced team, so I'm just kind of hoping to chalk this up to experience for them, and come back next year a little bit stronger, a little bit more organized.
Well, the problem with that is that they're not really going to be able to mature as that 5-man because news just broke a little while ago that Prismaticism is now a free agent.
And remind me again what role he plays?
He is their range DPS, I believe.
Okay, so I don't know, like if they're coming off of an HGC loss, I'm not sure what's next for him, what he's gonna do. I'll be looking on Twitter to see what team picks him up, but I don't know what's gonna happen for him at this point.
To be fair, though, I mean, the thing I was looking out for was, we got word that there was a player dropped from the team or he left. I'm not sure exactly if we have confirmation on that yet. But the thing I was looking out for was that the guy who picked Lost Vikings? Because then I think I know the story of what happened and what's going to happen going forward. But it wasn't him.
No, I think that was Goku who was playing the Lost Vikings.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, my buddy Goku. I don't know what's going on with him, man.
At the very least, in future, if he's, I don't know, trying out for a team, whatever, he can at least say, "Well, I didn't pick Lost Vikings, so I did all right."
Yeah,
I mean, someone was deciding on the draft, right? Like it's not, you pick the role and everyone says, "Oh, what were you doing?" Like it was a team decision.
Well, let's hope his voice was the quietest.
But I definitely think we saw some really promising stuff, and I think with the HGC changes that are coming in for 2018, we're gonna see even better teams, and an even better event. So I'm kind of excited. This kind of left me excited. This is the first time I kind of watched the full tournament from beginning to end. And I don't know. I felt for MVP Black. Their celebration, they got so emotional. And they're the dominant team in the world right now. That's gotta feel really good. Oh, and the fact that they're going home with $500,000 doesn't hurt either.
That's pretty decent, yeah.
No, that is not too bad at all. But what we get coming up is 2 new heroes to talk about. So we've got Alexstrasza, the Lifebinder, and we've got Hanzo, everyone's new main. Aden, what is your thoughts about Hanzo since you're a big Overwatch player?
Well, like I've said before, I'm looking forward to maybe being able to be a Hanzo main and have it not be a bad thing. Certainly, I'm liking the way his abilities are shaping up. The way they managed to implement his scatter arrow into Heroes of the Storm is really impressive. I like how that's looking.
Yeah, and I imagine it's going to be a lot easier now that you're only dealing with the 2 dimensions.
Yeah, not having to deal with the potential erratic nature of arrows flying into the sky when you don't want them to is nice. Though you won't be able to get the sweet one-shot kill that Hanzo can get in Overwatch by shooting a scatter arrow at someone's feet. So that's probably for the best. But I'm sure there will be a couple Hanzo mains out there who are a little bit disappointed by this.
Yeah. Now, the thing I'm most curious about is his trait. So he's going to be able to just jump over any unpathable terrain or structure. So it's just very similar to our cyborg ninja friend, whose name I'm blanking on.
Genji,
Genji,
the
yeah.
cyborg ninja, who has cyber agility. Now we've got his brother Hanzo with natural agility. Now, off the top of my head, I can't remember, of course, the cooldown of Genji's flip jump, but Hanzo, we're looking at a 30-second cooldown for jumping over unpathable terrain, so he's not going to be just flying around like a ninja making people annoyed. So that's good.
True. And then his sonic arrow, I'm not really sure about the use of this. I mean, obviously it grants vision, and then if it lands an enemy, it damages them. But I'm curious about what the primary use of this is going to be when you don't have a stealth character on the enemy team. Just like a flare, just to see if someone's, taking.
Yeah, the way you use it in Overwatch anyway is you just put it in a place where people will be coming from, and then you can see for definite when they are coming. So someone like Asmodan would combo with that really well, where you can plant a sonic arrow and then Asmodan can just straight dunk on that spot if necessary. People like Chromie could play into that as well.
Yeah, Chromie does have that. She has a talent that reveals an area, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so you can layer those two and just give her quite a bit of time to carpet bomb an area when you know people are coming through.
And what do we think of his alts with their both of them having a 100-second cooldown? We've got the Dragon Strike and Dragon's Arrow. Which one do you guys think will be more viable? Which one do you think will be more popular?
For me, it all depends on what they actually mean by short, medium, and long. And to further explain that for people who may not be 100% up to date on what these abilities do, Dragon's Arrow is second ult. Fires an arrow that's really similar. It's going to be very similar to someone who's familiar with Ashe from League of Legends. Fires an arrow really far across the battlefield. It'll explode when it hits someone and it stuns them for 0.5 seconds to begin with. Then after traveling a quote-unquote medium distance, the damage is increased and the stun goes up to 1.25 seconds. After a quote-unquote long distance, damage goes up even higher and the stun is 2 seconds. And a 2-second stun is obviously really significant, but like I don't know what long distance means. You know?
Or how big the AoE is after it explodes hitting an enemy hero.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's anything like the area of effect on Sylvanas' Wailing Arrow, I think is the name of it, and I'm not completely being a noob here. It could be pretty decent, but hers also you get to detonate in a pack of people manually, whereas Hanzo's just detonates as soon as it hits someone. So it would need a larger area of effect to have as huge of an impact. And again, I don't know how far I need to shoot this thing to get a 2-second stun. If I have to go like an Asmodan dunk distance, then who cares? I'm going to be taking Dragon Strike every time.
I'm basically seeing this like a really, really strong Li Ming orb. And, if you do her orb build and you kind of, the further it goes, the stronger it gets. But I'm just thinking with a 100-second cooldown, that seems high to me, and you're going to have to go to the longest distance to truly get your value out of that.
And that's
I find
kind
it
of
very strange that both heroics having 100-second cooldowns.
well, and the thing, like, yeah, it's 100 seconds, so you're not gonna have this up for every fight, so you have to make it very impactful when you do use it. But the thing that kind of, at the very, I mean, I haven't seen it in practice yet, so I could just be speculating incorrectly here. But if you want to obviously maximize your ult whenever you use it, especially with a 100-second cooldown. So you want to get that 2-second stun, which is significant for your team. If you're firing it from a long distance, that means you're not readily in the fight to follow up after that 2-second stun.
That is a really good point. It's not just getting the ult off to its maximum effect. It's being able to follow up on that appropriately.
Yeah, so it seems like if he wants to follow up on it, he's just basically getting a micro stun and a small little tick of damage. So I don't know how valuable that will be when from the same distance you can just throw a Dragon Strike on people and utterly nuke them to death.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the talent info here, and there's also, at level 20, hitting a hero with Stormbow, Scatter Arrow, or basic attacks is also going to reduce Dragon Strike by 5 seconds. So there is a time where, or something you can spec to kind of bring down those monstrous cooldowns. So there is that.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, he's going to have, if he takes that talent, he's going to have his ult up as often as he does in Overwatch, and people who play Overwatch know how just utterly frustrating that can be. Every single giant fight, all of a sudden, you're seeing dragons fly at your face.
It's true. I will just say that even though we lack some of the details and some things look bad on paper, the way that these always tend to go is like there's one, big, splashy, easy to use, high damage ult that is like for all the lower tier casual players, and then there's the really tricky to use like CC ult that's always way better in competitive play. So I'm kind of expecting the same pattern here, even though I'm having a harder time seeing it.
I will say I can see one probably actually pretty strong use for Dragon's Arrow, just fitting into a like a roaming gank comp. So if you have a proper team built for, let's say, the Lost Vikings, and you have your team, the rest of the team rolling as a group of 4, it'll be okay if Hanzo is kind of further away because you have your team to jump in. You probably have a Dahaka to run in and tongue someone, and then you can blast that arrow at its max distance, and then follow up with a huge stun, basically sealing the kill for your team. If you get a tongue followed by a 2-second stun, anyone you grab should be dead after that.
There's a lot of shoulds in Heroes of the Storm. So are there any talents that jump out for either of you in particular? We were discussing off the cast mounted archery.
That seems fun. I can't speculate properly on how impactful it'll be, but it seems neat. I like that.
This is the one that lets them instantly mount, and upon mounting, get an additional burst of speed for 5 seconds.
Specifically, he instantly mounts after using natural agility.
To be honest, I'm way more excited for Alexstrasza.
Well,
Because
before we move on, I just want to ask you guys, where do you think Hanzo is going to fit in a team comp or fitting into the meta?
He's going to be a hero that really rewards being able to land skill shots, especially tricky skill shots like his scatter arrow. So he's going to be one of those people, maybe not quite as advanced as someone like Kel'Thuzad, but if you're mechanically minded, I think he will definitely be a really, really good DPS addition to the team.
yeah, I'm kind of seeing him as a little bit like a Jaina. Like, in terms of, I'm thinking that's how big his health pool is going to be. Should be a bit squishy. And that makes me nervous.
I mean, it's a long-range AoE component. Doesn't really seem like he has great escapes. I think that's like an apt kind of comparison.
I mean, he has one pretty decent escape if he's near unpathable terrain. Also, we have to consider the power of Dragon Strike to be similar to something like Hyperion, in that it'll be a really, really strong zoning tool, even if it doesn't necessarily land full damage on anyone.
Also true. Yeah, that as well as Scatter Arrow for those like tight areas, like on Tomb of the Spider Queen when you're turning in. I think that's also definitely one of his strong points. And of course, he's got the reveal on E. Although, as we're going to discuss later, revealing stealth might not be as big a deal going forward.
At all.
Well, we'll have a talk. Now, Sam, you were saying as our resident support main, Alexstrasza's got you pretty excited.
Yeah, definitely not the resident stealth person. No, definitely not. Yeah, I like her, except I think she's gonna suffer from one of her ults being far more popular than the other, because the thing that stuck out to me about her was her ults and the fact that I never ever want to use Lifebinder ever. And I know that's what she's called. She's kind of based around that, but I hate it. I kind of really hate it.
You hate it because you're never going to be at 100% life.
No, and that's exactly it. And I don't.
Yeah, your bloodlust is way too high to ever be at 100%.
Yeah, so
way too high.
I don't see its usefulness. It's like a worse version of Rhaegar's ult, and I don't like it. I really like Cleansing Flame. I know she's a support, so a damage ult is a little weird, but it's gonna be like...
Well, that ult does heal as well.
It does heal, but it does do damage too, and actually that's why I like it. It's a little bit Lily, a little bit Junkrat. It's kind of a mix of those two things. And I actually really like that ult. I'm excited to play it. Whereas Lifebinder, for my playstyle personally, I'm never gonna use it, and I don't find it to be the most useful of the two.
Well, here's the thing. There's a lot of corner cases where Lifebinder can be really powerful. Obviously, it's a percentage-based heal, and a lot of Alexstrasza's kit is percentage-based heals. So she can just walk into a team fight and just, heal Cho'Gall to full in 2 seconds. So, I mean, that's pretty powerful. The other thing is that Rhaegar cannot heal himself with his ult, while Alexstrasza will be able to, if she's getting focused, lifeline to another character that's not being damaged, and then bring herself up to full.
Yeah, you just gotta be careful because it's a 2-second delay, and if you're already being focused, and later in the game, like, you're just gonna pop. If her health pool is really kind of small, it's gonna be a problem. I don't know. I just maybe once I see it in play, I'll like it a little bit more. But right now, as it looks, I'm basically going to be going cleansing flame all the time.
I
It's
think
really
it's
tricky.
it's possibly another one of those alts that we were just talking about, where there's one that's has obvious use, and then another has corner case use. This is the one where I don't see the point of Lifebinder, mostly because her main heal seems to directly counteract the usefulness of Lifebinder. Her Q heal requires 15% of her health unless she's currently in dragon form. So, she's taking out her own health, which fuels her ability to fully heal her teammate. So I guess it's a way, in some cases, it'll be a way to heal herself back up after spending her own health to heal someone else.
Yeah,
But
there's clearly a lot of tension going on in her kit between giving up health and having high health. Because if you look at her talents, there's a ton that say while she's above 75% health, gain some bonus, right? But her Q is draining her health. So I think that maybe what you're gonna do is see her in, well, obviously like double warrior composition and stuff like that, just because again, percent based healing is just good for that, and AOE percent based healing is even better. But also possibly again in like a double support, so that someone can keep her topped off, so that her healing is even more powerful. I don't know exactly how effective that would be, but again, we'd have to sort of see it in play to see
Yeah, in order to get the
how
most
difficult?
effect out of her talents, you're gonna have to be the Dragon Queen as much as humanly possible. Because, especially with that talent that you mentioned, like Gift of Life, that's the only time where it does not cost her that health, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that we might just have her be kind of like, this is a weird comparison, but like Abathur, where he's got his ultimate evolution, and that's just he needs to use it every team fight to be functional for the most part, to like really shine. And Alexstrasza might be the same, where you just need to be in dragon form for every fight, and then she's really not doing that much else all the rest of the time.
Speaking of her talents, it seems. I mean, I get um, giving her all of these above 75% health get X bonus talents. I mean, it'll separate the people who have the skill to keep her topped up while also healing their teammates. But having one that directly affects the cooldown of the ability that saps her health to use seems not good at face value. Once
There's
you
a
use her Q twice, she no longer gets the benefit of that talent.
Yeah, you were talking, Kevin, it might be good for her to be in a double tank comp, but I'm
Hmm.
almost thinking it would have to be a double support comp. Like someone to help her stay above 75%.
Well,
So
it
she
can
almost
Even
needs
if
a
it's
second
it could
support.
be it could be hyper carry, right? Like double tank, double support, and then like a Vala or a Grey Mane or something.
even if the second support is just someone like Tyrande and her Q is just dedicated to every now and then healing Alexstrasza, I could see that being much more useful.
Yeah, or Mouth. Mouth would be good too, I think. Someone where you can direct the heal to her.
Yeah, or even
I
just
mean,
like one of the heal over time heroes, like
mm,
Lucio or Brightwing, that can just, because it's only 15%, right? So if it can kind of top up that last little bit,
this is true. Basically, anything that lets that level 1 talent to reduce the cooldown of Gift of Life actually be worthwhile would be nice.
now we do
So
have to
yeah,
talk
someone
about
like Lucio would be good.
her cooldowns though, because Gift of Life has an 8-second cooldown, which is pretty long, and her W has a 16-second cooldown, which is very long.
So she might run into some old Uther syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a real chance. Now, her W abundance, which is the AOE heal for 20% of your maximum health. I could see that being very powerful, but I think it also kind of has like the Uther and Anna problem. People are just gonna dodge out of it all the time.
Well, thankfully, it's after 3 seconds, and there's a big
It's
circle on the ground. So if they run out of it, it's their own damn fault.
it is their own damn fault, but it also means that you're probably gonna lose the team fight anyway.
Now, after
But
Hanzo's 100-second cooldowns, what are the cooldowns on her alts
80 seconds.
for both?
Yes.
Oy.
But actually, going back to her W real quick, one issue I can see with this is it's a big circle on the ground that doesn't take effect until after 3 seconds, but it's also a circle on the ground that is telegraphed to your opponents.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. Is if there's like an ETC who's just waiting for the right moment to use his mosh pit, this is like just a bullseye.
Yeah, she's just painting a target for him at this point. Really anything like, oh, you want to get healed? Whoops, there's a lurking arm here. There's very many heroes who want to see that you need to stand in a circle right now.
Yeah, we could pretty much just go down the list, and every single hero will find some excuse to be like, oh, I can abuse that.
In that sense, she's going to be like Morales, where you kind of have to build the comp around her.
I think she will be a lot like Morales because she needs to really be in the back preserving her own health for her abilities to work for the most part.
And knowing
You also want her a little bit more forward to get the most use of her E, which is on a ridiculous 2-second cooldown.
Well, as a like support player, I'm definitely insta buying her when she comes out. She's gonna take a little bit of work. I think me and Aiden will have to do a coaching session, or I'll have to get a coaching session from someone to learn not to go beyond the tanks and kind of stay back a little. But I'm really excited to play this one more than I am Hanzo. I think Hanzo is gonna be an assassin, I believe, and the assassin role is just already so full, and I feel like a support is really what was needed.
Yeah, I think we need to just real quick like discuss her dragon form a little bit more because I think unlike Morales where she has to stay back all the time to be kind of effective, I think Alexstrasza again is having some of that tension where she has to back off most of the time, but when she's in dragon form, do you think she's going to be able to play a little bit more aggressively? Like we have the thing where she shrugs off 50% of stuns and roots and silences and stuff. So it's possible that that could be a niche for her, is if your opponents are, really heavy into CC, she could be kind of anti-CC, although I don't know if she actually has cleanse, which would be kind of the problem there.
Well, I mean, she does get more health in dragon form, which is good. She gets a much more powerful basic attack, which is also good. But paradoxically, she still doesn't want to be in the front because her basic attacks also heal still in an arc in front of her. So she still wants to be behind the front line.
Yeah, like it's kind of like Archon for Tastadar, I guess, where every time this is my own problem, is that every time I pop that, I just I thinking oh power overwhelming, and I just like run in and get popped immediately, and I fear the same thing is going to happen to me when I try and play Alexstrasza.
The same thing is definitely going to happen to me, but I do think that 500 health, like that's pretty substantial. That's what she gets as the dragon. So she is
Very
going
substantial.
Yeah, she's going to be able to come a little bit further forward, I think, especially since her Q is not going to affect her health pool anymore. Like I said, you're basically in team fights going to have to be in dragon form all the time.
And unfortunately, without knowing the cooldown of dragon form, we don't actually know how viable that is.
Yeah, I know the dragon form lasts 15 seconds, but I actually don't know the cooldown either.
I mean, 15 seconds is a solid duration for a high value skill or a high value team fight, provided you don't just pop it at the beginning of every fight. You gotta kind of time your use here. But if you use it at the correct moment, it can be really, oh no, wait, we do have a cooldown. Oh my god, it's a 150-second cooldown. You're not having that every fight.
Wow, no.
There's gotta be a talent that reduces that. I refuse to believe that there isn't.
At 16, there's one that increases its duration by 9 seconds.
That's pretty good. I mean, a 24-second dragon form is very, very strong.
There's a level 20 that says if you're using Cleansing Flame and you hit or heal 8, if you heal or damage heroes 8 or more times, you'll get an instant Dragon Queen upon landing.
Ooh, that's really going to reward people who can land all sorts of shots.
That's pretty good. I mean, she only gets 5 shots though, so like if you're gonna need to land either multiple damage or like a damage and a heal with several of these shots in order to make use of that.
Yeah, so there are a couple other talents that seem to be helping against like a heavy CC team. So at level 7, there's a heal there's an activatable 90-second ability. Heal an allied here for 15% of their maximum health. So again, percentage-based healing and damage nearby enemies. Healing a stunned, rooted, or silenced ally reduces the cooldown of this ability by 30 seconds. And then at level 13, there's Dragon Scales, which is gained 30 armor while stunned, silenced, or rooted, and for 2 seconds afterwards. So I think this is supposed to be a niche of hers as well.
Actually, the one that's interesting me the most is her third level 20, Blessing of the Red, that just gives an allied hero 500 health until they die on a 40-second cooldown.
Yeah, Sam, you were just talking about how 500 health is quite substantial.
Yeah.
So imagine being able to give your tank and then your other tank after 40 seconds, just each of them get 500 health.
Or basically full heal one of your really squishy assassins. Like, holy crap.
Yeah, and what this reminds me of is old Tassadar, where before a team fight, you would just kind of pop shields on a bunch of people, and there would be some lingering for when the team fight began. So this, with a 40-second cooldown, 40 seconds isn't crazy long. So you can, in theory, put this on a couple heroes, maybe even the entire team, like if things drag on and it's like there's aren't a ton of kills in that match.
There's going to be a lot of times where there's 40 seconds in between huge team fights. So yeah, even if you just get that on even just 2 heroes, like 2 frontliners, like 1 tank and 1 dive, you've just added 1,000 health to your team. That's insane. That could potentially be very swingy on its own.
Now, again, this is at level 20, though, so there's a very limited amount of time after 20 hits before the game is just over.
Unless you're on Dragonshire.
Yeah, point well taken, Sam.
Actually, looks like at 7, actually I think the one I'm looking at 7, if I'm playing her, just so I don't have to maybe rely on another healer as much, is it kind of rewards you playing a little bit more forward and hitting people with Flame Buffet. But when you hit someone with a Flame Buffet at level 7 with Burdened Flourish, you heal for 10% of your maximum health, which is really significant.
All right, well, we've got so much more stuff to talk about. Any last thoughts about Alexstrasza before we move on?
She's cool. Can't wait to play her.
Yeah.
But I'm honestly a little bit more excited for Hanzo.
And I'm the opposite. I really am looking forward to playing Alexstrasza, and Hanzo, I could take or leave.
I will redeem the Shimada clan.
All right, guys, we've got to move on because I have just got pages and pages of changes to go through, and a lot of them are really interesting. So one of the things that they're saying is that we're going to be doing slower paced releases. They're going to be less huge updates where there's like a new hero and like a new map and several reworks and a bunch of new skins and stuff. They're going to kind of spread it out a little bit more, which I certainly appreciate, because I think the big releases are just supposed to draw people's attention who have lapsed from the game. Well, 3 of us, I think, we're playing all the time. So for me anyway, I think this is a positive change.
It makes sense. I'm on board with it. Doing like a huge content drop all at once made sense for something like the Heroes 2.0 release. But at this point, I much appreciate a release schedule that's more like, one new thing to get used to, adapt it into the play style, figure out what's going on. Okay, now here's a new thing to get used to, etc., rather than like you're gonna have to learn this new hero on this new map with all these new changes to all these people, and if you don't, then too bad.
One feature that they're introducing that I don't think I'm ever going to use, but Aden, maybe you will, is the target info panel, where you can click on a tower, you can click on an enemy hero or an allied hero, and it'll give you their health and mana and their range and their attack damage and their attack speed and all that information.
Oh, I didn't even know they were adding that. I'm actually so on board with that.
Yeah, I just don't know when in the thick of battle I'm going to ever have time to do that.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Kevin. It's probably going to be really useful if you're playing like someone who's not immediately in the fight, but I'm not seeing myself using that.
I can see myself using that for selecting a target to get dunked upon. because really then all you have to know on your end is what number pops up when I smash someone with this basketball. And then if their number is a lower number than your basketball number, that's a dunk.
I mean, yeah,
So there are
the
more Kobe's in
basketball.
your future, is what you're saying.
Exactly. It was actually a feature I used a surprising amount of time during my brief stay in the League of Legends community. So I actually really appreciate it.
Okay, so then there's a change for everybody. Um, there's a small one where they're just doing a few user interface updates, like showing which hero is in a vehicle or a cocoon or within Stitches or in a Zagarama. You'll have an indicator that says, you know, Asmodan is inside Stitches somehow.
That's smart.
Or yeah. Now, one big change that people have been asking for forever is integrated voice chat. So you will automatically join the voice chat if you're in a group with other people, like in a party, and you'll be able to opt into a channel for when you just join a team as per normal. And these are the defaults. You can change them in the options and stuff. Sam, this is something you're actually a little bit wary about.
I am, and on one hand, I've been kind of like, okay, when are we getting voice chat? It's so much, because on a technical aspect, it's really hard to take time out to type something, and especially if you don't have the other members on comms at all. I do like it for that aspect, but holy crap. Like, the trolls used to have to type, now all they gotta do is talk. And I don't know, I think Overwatch is kind of particularly known for being very toxic right now with its voice chat. And yeah, I know the internet is kind of like that, but I kind of like that about HOTS, where I don't have to listen to people just go on and on and on, because you're gonna have a problem with spammers at this point. People are just gonna come in and just spam whatever they want, whether it's music or insults or whatever. Like, it's gonna be distracting in one way too.
I mean, you will have the option to just mute everything, which I plan on fully taking advantage of.
But then, but that's just gonna prove how much it's not needed in HOTS. If you're just gonna be typing to people anyway and you're not gonna be using the voice chat because people are just gonna be stupid with it, then I don't see the reason to put it in.
Well, I mean, if you're going to be muting someone because they're a spamming troll piece of garbage, you're not going to be typing to them either. So it won't change anything to just have them muted and not do anything about it. But then the few times that I have experienced in Overwatch, much to my surprise, where you get people who are communicative and just good teammates, you will appreciate having that additional channel to communicate with your team. Granted, I probably won't take advantage of it very often because I will be in Discord talking to people that I already know I can tolerate.
Yeah, I will like it for that, like for the rare times where I wish there was an option to talk to some people when they're actually being nice, or not even just nice, but actually being, cooperative, and for teams that actually want to go into ranked and win. I think it would make it a lot easier. I don't know, especially at my rank, I think I'm going to get a lot more of the negatives than I am of the positives. But I'll try it out when it comes out and try and be optimistic. I'm a little skeptical though. I don't know, Kevin, what do you think?
Personally, like I think that Heroes is such a team-focused game, and I think that they're actually trying to address that, which we'll get into a bit. But coordination is so key to this game that the difference between a team that's on comms and everyone knows where they're going and somebody's calling the shots it's a huge gulf between that and then five individuals that aren't communicating effectively. Obviously, this isn't going to make sure that everyone's got the same level of communication, but everyone will at least have the same tools available to them to coordinate. So I think that'll help certain matches not feel like quite the steamroll that they are. And again, everything's optional, so there will be negative impacts, I'm sure, like Sam says, but we have the tools to mitigate them.
If enough reports do go through, they could. I mean, they could make it so if people get reported enough, like it automatically flags it for review, or maybe, God forbid, it flags them for an automatic short mute for a period of time. But I do think voice chat will lead to us seeing more muted players, which
Absolutely.
I will enjoy because then I know mute is being used for something.
Now, I'll tell you what I'm going to enjoy. and that's this new change to performance-based matchmaking. Primarily because I am forced to play with you two dumpster tier players all the time.
I'm sorry,
Uh,
who's in silver right now and who's in gold?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that we need performance-based matchmaking so this type of mistake doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and actually, even for me and Lily Little Bronze, I do feel like a lot of times there are games where I am doing significantly better than the rest of my team, and I'd really like something that's gonna show that. And I've kind of just, this is one of the bigger changes that I've been kind of like, oh, hallelujah, they finally put this in. Because a lot of people like me who are trying to come from the bottom and rank up, if they lose with with a really trolly team, then there's no hope of them ever getting out of bronze, and I think this is really going to help those lower end players.
Yeah, this helps like, with teams that have people who are trolling or just, objectively atrocious. And it's also going to help with smurfing, where someone's jumping into like a low level account and then just crushing people. They'll rank up way faster and then they'll get back to their own skill level. What impresses me with this system is the way that it's been calibrated to depend on the hero that's being used. So, an Illidan is going to be judged on the damage they're putting out and the times they're dying and that sort of thing. But a Kerrigan player is also being judged on the amount of CC that she puts out. So everyone's kind of being individually gauged based on their own abilities and their own role, which I think is really great. And we'll see how well the system works, of course, when it rolls out in mid-December.
It
And th-
does actually raise an interesting point that clearly those the stat cards that pop up at the end of the match, those stats aren't being collected for just nothing. If because there are stat cards for how long you CC'd opponents in various ways. So clearly they're taking that into better consideration now.
but
Yeah.
I did hear the Q&A period about this, and one guy did ask, like, is there any change to that screen, the card screen, where it's actually going to reward people for getting those cards? Like, if you get MVP and you get upvoted 4 or 5 times, like, is there going to be any bonus for you? Is there going to be gold? Is there going to be shards? Is there going to be something other than having that card to your name? And they said, yeah, they gave a very wishy-washy answer. They're like, yeah, we know about that, but it's not really on our radar right now. I'd like to see that screen mean something, and I guess performance-based changes kind of make it mean something, but in another way, like, I want to be rewarded for getting MVP. I want to be rewarded for trying the hardest and
You want to
get.
be rewarded for MVP just because you got MVP with Asmodan.
Yes, I did. I did, and I'm very proud of that. And yeah, I will always be
Now,
proud of that.
speaking of Asmodan, there's a change that's coming through that's going to make Aden extremely happy, which is the change to camera height, where everything's
Oh
a
my
little
god,
bit more
thank
zoomed
you.
out. Everything's a little bit more zoomed out. You can see a little bit further, and that means that you can dunk on fools a little bit easier.
Also means I may have to spend less time without my own character on screen. Like the really long dunks, obviously he'll still be off screen somewhere, but there are many times where just like from one end of the lane to the other, or rather not end, but before the first forts, from one of those to the other, where I'm just throwing dunks and not looking at my own character, even though there's a team fight going on fairly close. It will be very nice to have this zoomed out camera where I can keep an eye on myself while still making fools mad with basketballs.
So the next thing that's up, I think, is actually gonna mess with Aiden quite a bit, and it's gonna mess with me too, because both of us enjoy playing specialists on occasion. I should say that none of this is technically set in stone. The plan is to release this in December at the start of the new ranked season, but they're going to be testing stuff for the next little while. All these changes that I'm going to discuss are based around improving the laning phase in Heroes, which Blizzard is of the opinion that it's too short and it's basically not impactful enough. So the biggest one to me is the lack, like the changes to there being ammunition for the towers. Going forward, there's going to be infinite ammunition on towers. which means that in order to do any damage, you actually have to push with the minion wave. You can't just let the minion wave crash into the towers, soak up some damage, soak up the ammunition, and then eventually the towers run out and then the minions just push it over. You actually have to push with it. I'm really worried about this. Before I get into it, what are your guys' thoughts?
Well, it's definitely going to make it harder for me to push every single lane on Volskaya as Asmodan. So that's kind of upsetting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to kind of theoretically see this in my head, but I do think it is going to make it slightly more competitive.
In
I
what
see
sense?
this actually drastically increasing Zul's value.
How is this drastically increasing Zul's value?
In comparison to other specialists who will need to be in lane, Zul can go in, clear a lane, generate 6 skeletons, whatever his max is, and then walk into the next lane and do the same thing there, while those skeletons are still doing a push up top, contributing damage to the various towers. Whereas someone like Asmodan puts down 1 minion, maybe 2 more if he's in that lane, but then if he's in that lane, he's just attacking the towers as well, because he can't rotate between lanes and be as effective. His effectiveness has always been planting his D and staying somewhere else.
I think that's the opposite of what's going to happen. I don't think you're going to be able to dual lane as Zul at all, because you'll spawn some skeletons, leave the lane, and then the skeletons are just going to get mowed down. Like before, when you were dual laning, these skeletons were pushing. They couldn't do too much damage because you weren't there, but they were absorbing tower shots. And that was the importance of his trait, was absorbing tower shots. Now I think he's really lost a lot of that power, and he needs to stay in lane and he needs to push with his skeletons, which means he's not moving to a new lane, not spawning more skeletons, not getting more value out of his trait.
I think you're thinking about it the wrong way. Everyone is losing power here. Zul is losing less power because he still generates dudes that attack towers. Think about it this way. He makes, what, 6 skeletons? I think is his max?
Yeah, without talents.
Yeah, so let's say 6 skeletons. Each tower can only shoot 1 skeleton at a time. So you're still contributing dudes that are, I mean, they're not absorbing ammo, but they're absorbing shots for the rest of the minions that are still attacking these towers. Whereas Asmodan only contributes, for example, as a counterpoint, a maximum of 3 bodies. But he's then still sitting in that lane, not having the ability to make more bodies in another lane. While Zul can make bodies and move to another lane and make bodies repeat.
I just think that you're underestimating, or you're overestimating the amount of damage that minions are going to be dealing to these towers without hero present.
Here's my thing. The thing I like about Heroes more than, say, League of Legends is that less time spent in lane collecting things, getting XP, and more focus on the more exciting things, which is the objectives in the team fights. And I think if you elongate the laning phase, you're going to lose your audience that is watching Heroes because it's less like LoL in that sense. So I'm kind of worried. I don't want to see this laning phase get too long. I just hope they know when to cut it off, because it's the least exciting for pro play. So this actually might be an issue for pro play for me.
This is what they're trying to say, is they're trying to say that the laning phase, short as it is right now, is short and boring. So they want to make it a little bit longer, but also not boring. By making it so that you actually have to push with these towers. You're not just rotating lanes, like not really fighting with each other. You have to push, and like they have to defend. So there's actual like struggle going on over these towers. It's supposed to be the idea.
Right, and I'm just really hoping they don't go too far one way, because this is the biggest difference, at least to me, between LoL and Heroes, other than the gold grind in LoL. And I don't know, I don't want to see it get too long.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. So moving on, some of the other changes to that wall of towers and their forts, they are removing the small towers that are next to the forts behind the wall. They were finding that they were basically obstructing the defenders' movement, interestingly enough, and it made it very easy to predict where they were going to be. So you could land your dunks, land your skill shots, because the defenders didn't have room to maneuver. And another change that's related to that is that the forts and the keeps are now going to reveal stealthed minions that are around them. So now that Abba's lost that second tower protecting him, he's going to have at least some true sight to protect him from stealthies who might, try to push forward and gank him.
Yeah, at the very least, it will make it a lot harder to run in and gank Abathur when you're taking heap shots to the noggin when you try.
Yeah, and I also heard something in the Q&A. Someone asked about moving the healing fountains behind the towers, behind the keeps, so that people can't just go in, burst down the healing fountain and then go out. So putting it back further so that they're not as exposed. What would you guys think of that change?
I kind of like them being exposed because it makes an interesting decision for the attacker whether they want to attack the more exposed but less valuable fountain that's easier to take down, or whether they want to push for the actual fort or keep in that instance.
Yeah, because when you're taking down a fountain, more often than not, unless you can find like a piece of terrain that you can fire a projectile through, a lot of the time it involves blowing down the wall that's next to the fountain and then shooting down the fountain. If you're doing that, you're not blowing down the tower that's important. So it does lead to an interesting decision.
Now, this next change, I think, is also going to be interesting to Aden, but more for his play with Kel'Thuzad, is the changes to regen globes. So this change is aimed towards making it possible to win a lane harder. Because right now, if you're winning a lane, you push the enemy back. You're limited in what you can do. You can attack the walls a little bit, attack the towers while your minions are still up. You don't really have that sustain necessary to really remain aggressive. So what they're doing is that when you spawn a regen globe, normally it's around for 6 seconds and you can just grab it or it disappears. Now it's going to be around for 4 seconds, and if you don't grab it during that 4 seconds, it shifts into a neutral state where your opponent can grab it for another 4 seconds. So that means that if you're really bullying your opponent out of the lane, you can just grab his regen globes as well and improve your sustain in the lane and win your lane harder, push harder, and just trying to make this early game more dynamic. Do you guys think that sort of thing is successful?
I really like that actually for making the single lanes more interesting, because now you're going to see more clashes over those globes, and I kind of like it a little bit more as a way to make the laning phase a bit more interesting. I think you're going to see more clashing and more fighting, which is what really, if viewers are watching it, that's what they want to see. I actually really like this.
I mean, I
And
think one thing this might lead to is for someone who's very mana hungry and doesn't necessarily need the backup of a minion wave, like tactically letting the other minions kill your regen globe minion so that you can have that mana regen, and then blowing up that wave and continuing on with your life. I welcome any change that lets me not die so hard earlier in the game.
like you were saying, Sam, sometimes the laning phase is, you want to move on, you want to get into the action, and Blizzard agrees with you. They recognize that not all maps like you being in lane and they pull you out early. And some maps like you being in lane, they keep you there for a long time. Like Tomb of the Spider Queen, for example.
Yeah.
So what they're trying to do is they're trying to unify the rules for the battlegrounds to make them more simple to learn. They have to reduce the amount that you need to keep in your head if you're trying to be competitive. So instead of having to be like, okay, so the temples on Sky Temple, the first one pops at this time, and okay, Tomb of the Spider Queen, you can start turning in gems at this point, and the first tribute on Cursed Hollow starts at this time. They're setting them into 2 different slots. So the ones that the objectives that spawn early will spawn at 1 minute 30 seconds every time, and the objectives that spawn late will spawn at 3 minutes every time. You're going to get 30-second warnings for when the objective is going to spawn. 30 seconds is a good healthy time. And it's going to have, even earlier than that, you're going to have location indicators about where the tribute's going to be, where the shrine's going to be, so that you don't have that thing where it's, the tribute pops up, it's halfway across the map, and you're like, okay, well, I guess it's just luck as to whether we were close enough or not to get there in time.
Also, I mean, how many times have we been playing a game and gone, oh, the tribute's up?
But again, I think warning us where the tribute's gonna be for what was it, 30 seconds, makes it a little less interesting. It'll be easier, like being predictable isn't always a good thing.
Think
It's
about it
true.
this way. That means you have to adapt now to having to assume that the entire enemy team is always going to be there as well as your team. So it's not just going to be this like ridiculous one team shows up 5-man and then there's 2 people on the enemy team trying to poke. If you get 30 seconds of solid indication of where that objective is going to show up, you're going to have a team fight every time.
That is true. I mean, it does make for a bigger, flashier team fight of 5-on-5 instead of, one team at least trickling in one by one. So yeah, I guess in that way I see it. I don't know. It's gonna depend on how epic those team fights are, I guess.
The way
Yeah.
I'm looking at it is like it's either the old way where it's down to potentially people not realizing that the tribute is up, or the new way where everyone knows the tribute is up. So there's less ability for just someone tunnel visioning, excuse me, to make the game less good, let's say. I'll say it poorly, but they'll make the game less good by tunnel visioning and not realizing that the tribute is up.
Yeah, I think the aim here is to make it more of a decision, when you show up to the tribute, if you show up to the tribute, if you were dead or you can't make it for one reason or another, that's part of the circumstances you're in, but it shouldn't just be, oh, I actually just can't make it there because it's on the other side of the map. And then the last change that we're going to discuss in terms of the laning is to mercenaries. And this change is forced a bit by the change to infinite ammo, because quite often, if you got a bruiser camp, they're primarily absorbing tower shots. They're tower fodder for a long time until those towers run out of shots. And it doesn't really work anymore. So what they're trying to do is they're tinkering with a lot of things, but they're trying to distinguish some of the individual merc camps a little more. So on Dragonshire, the Knight camp, they're going to make it so that the Wizard mercenary gives spell armor aura to heroes and the other mercenaries there. For the
Is it
Hellbent,
specifically spell armor on the wizard?
specifically spell armor, yes, they did reveal that. This displeases you?
I mean, I was hoping it would be just generic armor for minions, so that there was like it would play into the changes to the lack of ammo now, where a hero who can take bruiser camp early is much more valuable now because that contributes so much to the push. It still contributes, but less in that it's not protecting the rest of the wave anymore.
In a rare move, I'm going to agree with Aden here, and just go with I agree. I think having it protect the minions to make that push kind of a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more to deal with. I like that a bit more.
Well, I think the idea here is that they're trying to make it so that it's not something you can just go grab and then kind of forget as much, because as it stands, if it was just pure armor, then you could let it go and then it would protect your minions and then you get more value and you don't even really have to be there. All it does is protect them a little bit for when the enemy hero shows up to rebuff that push. I think the idea is it's supposed to be protecting you when you're pushing with it against the enemy hero who's trying to come and defend it.
The thing that's actually interesting me about this, and maybe, I don't know, maybe Kevin and I just will never agree on anything, or I have a really iconoclastic way of looking at these things, but I'm looking at this, and even though it's not like the Bruiser camp, for example, is not protecting your minion wave, I'm still looking at this as, okay, who can I play that is constantly taking minion or merc camps forever? Because we don't need someone in that lane to push it if we're constantly shoving mercs into it literally at every possible opportunity. So I don't know, maybe I'm weird, or maybe you're wrong. I don't know. But I don't know what it is, but we're just not agreeing on anything tonight, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate the fact that you busted out the word iconoclast to make up for the fact that you said you used not good as your adjective of choice earlier.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's just one of the changes to one of the mercenary camps, though. There's also the Hellbat, who's going to be decreasing enemy armor with each of his attacks. So again, this is very much devoted to fighting heroes. So the hero that's repelling the Hellbat push is going to be weaker. So if you're pushing with it, you're going to have an easier time defeating them. And then the last change that we know of now, again, all of this is subject to change, but the siege giants are just going to be, right now, they are dodgeable in lane. You can dodge their attacks in lane, but once you're actually getting them in the jungle, like in their actual camp, then you can't dodge them. So it's kind of weird and inconsistent right now.
Also, sometimes makes it miserable to try and take them.
Yeah. So going forward, they're going to be dodgeable in camp or the jungle as well as in lane. So it's possible that if you're just good at your stutter stepping, that you can just take the camp without ever being hit.
So can we agree that Tracer is now the ultimate siege camp getter?
Your words again. No, we cannot agree. We're not going to agree on anything today. Well, we need to get ready to disagree one more time because we're about to discuss what I think right now is perhaps the most contentious change. Either that or the infinite ammo. But the changes to stealth are definitely a really big topic of discussion right now.
I'm rolling up my sleeves.
Yep, cracking the knuckles.
All right, Aiden, do you want to take the lead on this one?
I hate the changes. Is that coming on too strong? I find these changes to be utterly contemptible.
Good. I'm starting to get a sense for how you feel.
We've discussed this a little bit off cast before, but I was in the camp where I never understood why people couldn't spot stealth heroes immediately. They've always just been so easy for me to spot every time. So it never seemed like it was really an impactful ability to have. So when I heard that they were making changes, my immediate thought was, okay, cool, stealth is getting stronger now.
So why don't you tell the folks at home what the stealth changes are?
Well, the good old-fashioned Predator shimmer is going away, and now we're getting just a really obvious sort of like white ghosty shader that is, oh my god, it's so easy to see. It's terrible. It might as well not even be called stealth anymore. The only saving grace is that they have confirmed in the deep dive that they will at least test making stealth heroes go completely invisible after not moving for, I believe, 1.5 seconds. Might have been 1.25. Either way, around 1.5 seconds or so of not moving, they go completely invisible, which is cool, but I hate it. I just don't like making stealth less valuable than it already was, which to me, again, was very, very low value already.
Here's my thing. I kind of agree with Aiden, especially in pro play. I really don't think anything needs to be made easier. Here's the one instance where I would be okay with this happening, and that's in bronze play, in unranked play. For bronze and silver players who are maybe new to the game and not as good, I would kind of like to see, like, I have it act like training wheels, and then as you progress up the ladder, if you're at like gold, platinum, diamond, grandmaster, have it go back to the way it was and be truly invisible with your little predator shimmer, I think it should be on a gradient level. I don't think it should be one or the other. I think for newer people, it would be easier to learn how to adapt to stealthies, and then as you move up the ladder, you no longer need those training wheels anymore, so it should be right back to invisible. And in pro play, it for sure should not be easy to see stealthies. That's why people pick stealthies. So I'm kind of half and half on this. I'd like to see that change where they kind of meet us in the middle, and if that doesn't happen, I'm going to go with Aden on this and just net negative. It would just be a net negative for me. I don't think it adds anything to the game to make them easier to see.
Okay, well, first of all, I hate your idea about there being a gradient between the different leagues. I think
We agree on something.
okay, great. I think you'd really damage like learning by having inconsistent rules. I think that's kind of doing more harm to people's expectations and confusing people, and I think you'd get less educational value doing it that way. But for Aiden, as to why he is wrong, is because
Not.
okay, look, when you say like, oh, it's so easy to see, I never understood why anyone couldn't see it. That's part of the problem. First of all, you're being ableist because you got a good, decent monitor and you're actually able to see it. What Blizzard was saying is that basically it was an eye test for whether people could see them. Partially technological because certain monitors, certain graphics cards, certain settings would make it easier or harder to see. So in certain situations, if you have a really good computer, it's actually harder to see them than if you had a terrible computer. And again, your own visual acuity kind of affected whether you could see them as well. So I really hated that ambiguity in whether you're supposed to be able to see them or not. I didn't like it being like, oh, am I squinting? You know, for me, my opinion before these changes came out was always that it should either be completely invisible or it should be something like what they're doing, where it's visible enough that you should just be able to see them as long as you're not totally not paying attention. Now, they're still invisible on the minimap. They still can't be targeted by auto attacks or by point and click abilities. So it still has that type of inherent value, even without being, actually undetected. Blizzard just had an impossible job trying to balance them because in one tier, the ability was useless, while on another tier, the ability was absurd. So what they've done is they've just made it way simpler for all people involved.
Stealthies are useful because you can't see them. So have this easier to see kind of model in casual play, and then have your just plain invisible old model stealthies in pro play.
And then what do you do about people who want to transition from casual to pro play? They've been then trained on the training wheels protocol of people being visible while stealthed. And then that's an extra barrier they have to get over when they try to go into the big boy leagues.
I get what you guys are saying about consistency as far as learning, but I don't know. I think it would make a difference for casual players. I see what they're saying about stealthies not being great for casual players, and I don't know. I like my solution a little bit more.
I don't want it to be an eye test. I don't want it to be like, oh, you have better eyesight than this other player, then okay, then you get to obliterate stealthies, while someone who has a little bit worse eyesight and just can't detect the shimmer, okay, you can't play this game because now you just die to stealthies every time.
I would like to my ideal solution would be a stealthy is permanently and completely invisible. I mean, as long as they're stealth, they're completely invisible. And then that puts more value in the various revealing abilities that heroes have.
Yeah.
And maybe throw one or two more out there somewhere where it's appropriate if they feel that they need to. But that would dramatically increase the value of those talents, making them actually interesting choices more often than I don't have anything better to do. I guess I might as well get a reveal.
Well, let me put it to you this way: why is Zeratul the only stealth character that sees regular competitive play? It's because he is not a one-trick pony. If he gets seen, which he is seen all the time in pro play because they're trained for it, he's not still useless because he's high mobility, high damage. He has an extremely useful heroic, and he can operate as a hero without a gimmick. The other heroes, they are their gimmick. If Nova is seen, she just ceases to be useful in any way, shape, or form.
But that calls for hero reworks, not for stealth reworks. Like if you wanna make stealthies more useful, if you wanna make them easier to play or easier to come up against, I think you need to modify the characters, not the stealth.
An interesting way to try and balance Nova around this, at the very least. I have no idea what you do with Valeera, but for Nova, make revealing effects not show you which one is the real Nova and which one is a hologram. That would allow for high level play where people can pretend to be a hologram and get away with it.
Well, I guess we're just going to continue our pattern of not agreeing with each other because I think you're both completely insane, and I totally applaud Blizzard for this decision towards consistency, towards stealth heroes feeling more like heroes and feeling less like just abusing a gimmick, and towards fairness and balance for all. So Aden, do you want to explain what the changes are to these stealth characters that they've been allowed to give them? They're free to buff these characters now that they've changed how stealth works.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump into my girl Nova, who you guys know I love more than life. The biggest thing that we need to talk about right away is Snipe gets a baseline version of Snipe Master, where if you repeatedly land your Q on heroes without missing, it stacks damage. They've changed it slightly so that you get 5% bonus damage per hit up to 25%. Once you hit 25%, it jumps another 25 to 50. So they've reduced the damage slightly baseline by they're estimating around 10-ish%. But if you land 5 shots on a hero without missing, then you jump 50% bonus damage from the base, which is beautiful. She got I don't remember the name of the old talent, but she gets a talent at level 1, advanced cloaking, where she would get like 25% movement speed and additional mana regen in stealth. She gets 15% movement speed just baked into being stealthed, which is beautiful. And she now has an activatable trait on her D to just turn invisible right away, and she becomes unrevealable for 0.5 seconds. So that would be should be the completely invisible form for half a second.
So this is kind of like Valeera just vanishing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's hers is on a 60-second cooldown though, whereas Valeera's has moved to an 8-second cooldown. So little different. Valeera is obviously designed more around jumping in, murdering someone or disabling someone, and then stealthing and being annoying. Whereas Nova has to go in and get the kill, and hope to God she has her D off of cooldown if she doesn't.
Yeah, I actually like these changes. I think it'll make her more useful. I think it'll make her more popular. But on an end, from someone who has to play against her, this is also going to make her way more annoying.
Oh, don't worry, I'll just pick her all the time.
Okay, thanks, buddy, because I really don't want to play against that kind of Nova. That is going to be... I remember back when, maybe it was like a year ago, where Nova was picked all the time, and it was just constantly being worried about getting sniped. And I like the changes from an objective standpoint, but I'm going to hate playing against her now.
Yeah, that person taking Nova all the time, that was me when I started the game. I learned the game on Nova. So maybe that tells you a bit about me.
No wonder
Yeah.
you never learn how to soak.
Oh, I knew that was coming.
Ooh, other big thing about it plays into her snipe changes as well. Perfect shot, which reduces the cooldown of her snipe if she lands it on a hero, is now moved to a level 7 talent. The cooldown reduction is only 2 seconds instead of 3, but level 7 talent, that is massive. Nova has such value. As soon as she hits level 7, she is just sniping fools forever, and I'm in love with her.
But how do you think the stealth changes are going to bring... What do you think they're going to bring to her rework?
you are really going to need to be able to use her hologram properly. Because otherwise, yeah, she's going to have, because like Kevin alluded to, she doesn't have the ability to just like teleport away after doing her thing. So she, weirdly enough, this may end up making her vary between this like weird running in when people are distracted and firing off some shots and then leaving, and then varying into like almost like staying stationary to get the invisibility if that change stays. Stay stationary, get the invisibility, let your team kind of pull people towards where you're hiding and ambush from there.
Now, how about the other stealth heroes that have been changed? There's still Samuro and there's still Valera and Zeratul.
I mean, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Zeratul, we'll start with, he gets Vorpal Blade by default. That's amazing. Lets him stick to people really, really well. But the thing that I'm calling it right now is going to be changed in some way. He's getting a completely new ult. They are replacing Shadow Assault because no one used it. Shadow Assault is now the name of a level 4 talent. That's how much respect Shadow Assault earned as a heroic. He is now getting a new ult called Might of the Nathrazim, which, seriously, just hear me out on this, y'all. It's ridiculous. He can activate it to recast his last used ability, and so he can double cast, for instance, his swipey swipe, whatever the hell it's called, and also passively gives him 40% bonus attack damage after using an ability. So stacking with various new talents he has, like for example, basic attacks granting spell power. Seems like it's really good when you can go in and basic attack, cleave, basic attack, cleave again. At level 20, it refreshes all basic abilities if you upgrade it. You can triple cast cleave. It doesn't make sense. Why are they allowing this?
I mean, I guess they just wanted to make sure that Zeratul did not leave pro play after the stealth changes.
Yeah, I guess. Like, they really don't want him going anywhere, but the other stealthies aren't getting the same love. I love the changes to Nova, but they're not nearly as significant as this.
No, I think I agree with you. I think this is going to be changed because just like even the ability to triple teleport is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a crazy amount of, like, you can shift between a lot of lanes if you're triple teleporting.
But I think even just having a more usable second alt is gonna make him way more popular. I know he's already popular in pro play, but I don't know. It kind of turns me off of playing a hero when I know that there's not going to be a variable alt that I can use depending on the strategy, depending on where we are in the game, depending on our comp. Having just basically only one alt to use just tells the team exactly what you're going to do. And the alt thing is what I really like.
Granted, yeah, it definitely makes him have a more interesting choice behind his level 10 tier. My worry is that they've almost gone too far, and now this one kind of eclipses Void Prison in that obviously it's a very different usage, but can you afford to get rid of this crazy damage output that Might of the Nathrazim allows? Like, even just thinking mathematically about the damage that a cleave followed by bonus 40% damage auto attack, followed by a cleave, followed by a bonus 40% auto attack would actually put out. Just think about that numerically. That's insane.
I mean, Void Prison is still absurd and was the reason you picked Zeratul, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's because his other option was Shadow Assault, and we saw where that went.
Level 4.
Level 4 talent.
Valera's really gotten a lot of that too. She's got mount speed increase while she's vanished, and she has 100%. She has double range on her stealth abilities after she's been stealth for 3 seconds.
Her changes are very interesting as well. I don't know if Kevin, I know you're not hugely into Valera. Sam, did you play much Valeera during your
I
time?
did, and I really enjoyed her actually. I enjoyed her more than Zeratul because of his alt situation. So I actually picked her over Zeratul most times.
I do like where they're going with her in that some of her openers, um, they gave her a blind on her stun opener, so she actually has that gives her a lot of options.
Yeah, and then Samuro, he's just gotten even more complicated to play just right off the base level because now he gets the ability to swap with his other mirror images at baseline on a 20-second cooldown.
Yeah, on your point of making him more like harder to play even, or making at least the skill curve kind of go up. I've never played Samuro and he intimidates me. So I think making his skill curve go even higher, eh, I'm not sure about how much more he's going to get picked. I'm not sure if his popularity is going to go up, but you guys can tell me a little bit more about what these changes actually mean
Roll
because I've never
roll
played him.
20. Roll 20 picked him in game 1 if
Yeah,
you remember correctly.
but they're pros. I am
They
not a
are.
pro. um,
Yeah, no, I to me that's the reason I you pick Samuro is for the mind games of just hopping back and forth between his different images. Bladestorm is just a bad alt for the most part. Like as soon as you use it, people just turn on you and you die. Um, so I really like this change, and I think it's going to train people to use the better alt from the very beginning. Illusion Master is getting changed now, so all the images can be controlled individually. So it's kind of like Vikings a bit, and their damage is doubled. And also it makes the cooldown of the image switching down to 6 seconds instead of 20 seconds.
So if I remember correctly, they have at baseline, I believe, moved some of the damage from the illusions just back onto Samuro himself. I don't know if they mentioned this during the deep dive anyway. I'm not sure if they've reduced the damage that mirror images do by default, thus making Illusion Master's damage bonus more significant. But they mentioned one of the big things they wanted for Samuro was to make him less of a dude who summons two pets who then go and do damage to things while you do nothing, and more he has images that fake people out while he smashes people's faces in. So, like you said, it's much more mind gamey now. But he's also on top of all of these changes to be, oh god, just way more complex. The skill ceiling has been raised dramatically. He has gotten at least one quality of life change where when you summon your images, you will be the one closest to the mouse cursor, so you don't randomly get teleported somewhere anymore. You know where you're going.
Getting randomly teleported behind an enemy wall is one of the
Yes.
worst experiences of playing Samuro.
Yeah, it's not fun, especially now that the the forts and keeps will reveal you.
So I'm really enthused for that. I'm enthused for the changes to all the stealth heroes. You all know that I'm a really big fan of the way that Blizzard's dealt with this. Now we have saved the very best for last, which is the biggest, most impacting change to Heroes of the Storm, bar none, and that is the Lily rework. Because after a little convincing, Sam turned me on to Lily, and then I turned Aiden on to Lily, and we're all three of us are big Lily fans.
Yeah,
yes.
I don't play support, but I still like me some Lily.
And I liked her because she could go between damage and support. And initially, you know, Kevin, that I was like, no, don't change my Lily. She's perfect the way she is. She does not need changes. But after reading over these changes, I do get where they're trying to make her more balanced between healing and damage. Because right now, the most popular build is just to build her blind, take the dragon alt, and just do a ton of damage. But I really think this is going to force a choice now because a lot of stuff is getting buffed and she's not going to be as mana hungry, which makes me really happy.
Yeah, Sam, do you want to walk us through some of the major changes that we're going to be looking forward to?
Okay, one of the major things I'm seeing with Lily is changes to her Jugs alt, which to me, being stunned out of that is just the worst and happens far too often. Um, basically what they're saying now with it is the longer you channel it, the longer your cooldown. So if you get stunned out of it, your cooldown actually comes down. Say so you channel it for 1 second, your cooldown goes down to 30 seconds. Um, and if you get stunned right out of it, your cooldown is reduced to 20 seconds. If you channel for the full 6 seconds, you still have your 70-second cooldown. But I do think that that makes it a little less frustrating for those who actually have to solo heal and need to take jugs in order to be effective.
Lily's most busted talent was always her level 20 Kung Fu Hustle, and that part of that is being wrapped into her trait, Fast Feet. So normally, when she gets damaged, she gets a 10% movement speed increase. What Kung Fu Hustle did is it increased that made her cooldowns refresh much faster. So the new Fast Feet is going to be whenever Lily's damaged, she gets that 10% movement speed, but her cooldowns also refresh 50% faster. So I think that'll really be a big buff to the way I like to play Lily, which is fairly aggressive, where you're kind of trading blows a little bit, like dancing in and out of the front line, getting some damage in, because that's just going to make her far more effective if she's able to apply a bit of chip damage to herself as she's playing.
One other
Uh,
change I'm falling in love with, and this comes back for us filthy DPS lilies, is Blinding Wind is at level 13. You can hit an additional target. If 3 targets are hit, the damage is increased by 100%. And I love anything that's gonna give that E more damage. I love that ability, and that to me is just gonna make DPS Lily even better.
Now that's the difficulty is that's kind of accommodating for the fact that level 1 there no longer is that just base 40% damage increase buff, which was very much essential to that build. So we're gonna have to see how that shakes out. I don't think it's necessarily going to be that hard to actually hit 3 heroes a significant portion of the time. But whether the uptime on that is going to be enough to make it better than the other talents, it's not really sure, not really clear.
It's just gonna make it so that you're doing less spamming of your E and putting more thought into when you use it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I believe it does prioritize heroes, but if you're just surrounded by, minions and you're not guaranteed of whether that third one's going to land on a hero, I could see that being a possibility.
Or if
Um,
one's just a little bit, one hero could just they could be there, but just be a little bit out of range. So you just really have to be, it's good that fast feed is getting some changes because you are gonna have to be faster.
yeah, for sure. And then another really nice change is Cloud Serpent, her W, is now going to heal for half the damage it deals by default. So that was previously a talent that she had to take. So again, she's just sort of her healing is getting a lot more consistent. Well, I think her damage is getting kind of a little bit spikier, if that term makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna have higher heights and lower lows.
Yeah.
But I think that's gonna just sort of make her overall. You're less likely to get flamed for choosing her for healing, and she'll be interesting to play. She might be a little bit more exciting.
It's interesting to see that at 16 she gets her Cloud Serpent can heal for a percentage health. So I don't know. Can we start seeing Lily healing a Cho'Gall? I'm
I
down.
think I think Alexstrasza and Oriole still definitely have the claim to fame for healing Shogal, but in case one of those gets picked or banned out, then this is a nice backup option.
They're
Yeah.
also not pandas.
They're also not pandas.
Lily has a special place in my heart. I learned on Lily. I learned on supports, so I'm always going to keep playing her, but this just to me makes her even better. And it brings back Serpent build, which I kind of miss playing because right now I almost always just build my E, and I really feel like bringing Cloud Serpent back was something they meant to do to balance her out a little bit and make that build a little bit more appealing to people. So I actually might go into this thinking, okay, I get to play Cloud Serpent build more now, which is great.
Well, maybe everyone will finally appreciate Lily as much as we always have.
To be fair,
S-
they're going to be appreciating her for a very different reason than we used to appreciate her.
You mean actually being healed instead of her healing herself while she murders fools?
Exactly.
And I'll continue surprising people with how useful she can be, because I don't know about your guys' rank, but at my rank, people kind of always yell at me for what I take, but then I end up being extremely useful, and they always seem to be surprised, so maybe they'll be a little less surprised.
I don't know. To me, there's just going to be no end to the surprises because Blizzard has thrown out so many changes. I, for one, am really enthused by pretty much everything except possibly for the ammunition changes. I'm still very worried about that.
Me too.
But BlizzCon was absolutely fabulous to watch from beginning to end, from the HGC to the new heroes to even all these just basic changes that are absolutely going to transform Heroes of the Storm.
And I'm always going to say this, the biggest thing I hope for these changes is to make it more appealing as an esport.
Well, for me personally, I mean, the esports is a really big element to me, but I'm just really glad that these are all going to be huge quality of life improvements for me. So, I mean, after all that, we've got to wrap it up. I'd like to thank Phantom and Kay for producing all of the great music that you hear throughout the cast. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Facebook or Instagram at Scrub League Podcast or at Twitter at Scrub League Cast. You can speak to us privately at scrubleaguepodcast@gmail.com. And so for Samantha Eamon and Aiden McCarville, this is Kevin Hamilton saying, we will see you once again. Don't try and stop me in the Nexus.
Kevin, find a new outro. Just do it. Just a new one.
I'm willing to hear suggestions from either of you.
We'll get back to you.
Yeah, well,